Please welcome to the show the chair of the Wisconsin Democratic Party, who's already out here, and a person we would duplicate 49 times if we could, is Ben Winkler. You want me to sit here? We're changing it up. Hi, Ben.
Hey, John.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you, John.
So first of all, your shirt says Mickey's Dairy Bar.
Yes.
And is that sort of like right from the udder, or what kind of?
So if you like dairy products,
Sure.
If you like pancakes, if you like scramblers, if you like calories, if you like paying in cash for the best food, arguably on earth, then Mickey's Dairy Bar is the place where you should spend as much time as possible.
Okay. Then I'll do that. I'll simply do that. I think a lot of people here in this crowd know the situation in Wisconsin, and a lot of our listeners try to keep up with the depravity. But I want you to walk us through it because I think sometimes it can sound like hyperbole to summarize just what's going on here in this very delicious state. So I want to go step by step. The last time I saw you was in the run-up to the Supreme Court election. What happened in that election, and why was it so important?
So this spring, this April, we had what arguably, I would argue, was the most important election of 2023. It was a state Supreme Court election, which normally is a low-profile thing that only people within the state really know about. In this case, it was a race that would determine the balance of power on our state Supreme Court, which could be the only way to essentially unlock this trap that Republicans have caught the state in for the last 12 years. Because if the progressive candidate could win the state Supreme Court race, it would become possible to actually look at whether the ultra-gerrymandered maps in our state are unconstitutional, to see whether the pre-Civil War abortion ban should actually be in effect in the state of Wisconsin, to see whether the state should actually, honor voting rights or whether it should overturn presidential elections, which is what some of the old Supreme Court justices liked. So with all that on the line, Wisconsinites turned out at record numbers. And in a state where 4 of the last 6 presidential elections has come down to less than 1 percentage point, they elected progressive Justice Janet Protasiewicz by 11 percentage points, a gigantic landslide.
Incredible. And I was here, we were right before the election, and we were going to send people off to knock on doors and turn out the vote. And I remember right as we were leaving, you said something like, let me tell you what's next. They're going to use this gerrymandered map to try to get one more seat. And if they get that one more seat, they might try to impeach her. And it was like, don't tell me that today. That's a tomorrow problem. I can't think about that today. Can we just win this thing and have a good day for once in our fucking lives, Ben Winkler? Can we have one good goddamn day? But you were already thinking ahead because you saw how much of a threat it posed to Republican power for the voters of Wisconsin to change the makeup of the Supreme Court. So what happened? So why do Republicans now in this state have the ability to basically undo this election?
So this is a power kind of written into the Constitution by accident, as far as we can tell, that Republicans figured out this set of loopholes where they essentially gerrymandered the living daylights out of Wisconsin. So they several times have lost the majority of votes for state legislative elections and then won gigantic majorities because they rigged the map so badly. At this moment, Republicans have 65 out of 99 seats in the state assembly. 64 out of 99 seats, so almost 2/3. In the state senate, they have 2/3 of the state senate seats. They're the the biggest partisan gerrymander of any state legislative chambers in the country. And under the Constitution, if you have a majority in the state assembly, you can impeach. You can impeach a Supreme Court justice, you can impeach whoever you want, and then the state senate, if it has 2/3 of the votes, it can convict. So after the election, actually before the election, Republicans started imagining, wish-casting this moment when they could just overturn the election, punch voters in the face, and nullify their votes by impeaching a Supreme Court justice. Right afterwards, the head of the state Senate said, we're not going to use impeachment to overturn an election. And so it seemed like the danger went away. But in August, Justice Protasewicz was sworn into office, and the Republican Speaker of our state assembly, a guy named Robin Vos, not a beloved figure among Wisconsin voters, Robin Vos started publicly threatening to impeach Justice Protasewicz before she ruled on a single case in the state Supreme Court, essentially to take her off the bench. And if he does that, this is the really devilish thing. Even if they don't have a trial to convict her in the state Senate, or acquit her, which would be totally logical because she's done nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong.
And the Constitution requires doing big things wrong to be impeached. Even if there's no trial in the Senate, if they impeach, the Supreme Court justice is suspended until the trial, which means that they could essentially just delete the election, tell the voters, I'm sorry, your vote has gone up in smoke. And that is what they're threatening to do over and over publicly right now in our state.
And there is no, it's shocking how brazen they're being about the lack of a rationale, or offering rationales that of course would apply to every single conservative justice as well, right? About donors, about taking positions, right? There's members of the Supreme Court that have worn NRA hats. They're ruling on gun cases. There's no logic to it. If this were to happen, so first of all, can you talk a little bit about like the blowback? Like obviously Democrats are outraged about this, but it does seem as though this has slowed a bit and they've been looking for ways to seek some kind of political cover because of how unpopular and radical this is.
Now they are. So at first, they were talking about this. They were trying to intimidate a justice on the Supreme Court into recusing from a case. And their claim about why she should do that is, it runs directly into the rules that they set up. So they said that she should recuse from a case about the constitutionality of our gerrymandered maps because they claimed that she had said the maps were rigged on the campaign trail, which is a statement of fact, but it's also a kind of a personal opinion. They claim that to say the maps are rigged is to prejudge the case about whether it's constitutional to rig them, which is exactly the opposite of true. Courts have found that our maps are rigged, and the whole question is that constitutional to do? So she said the maps are rigged. They say that's a problem. Republicans on our Supreme Court, before they were elected justice, have said that compared abortion to slavery and the Holocaust, said Planned Parenthood is wicked, said that they would never have to recuse in abortion cases, even involving Planned Parenthood. So that is totally bunk. The other thing is they say that Janet Protasewicz received support from the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, which is true. Now, we're not a litigant in the case, but even if we were, conservative justices on our state Supreme Court made the rule that campaign donors do not force recusal by the justices that they gave money to on their campaigns. And the big moment around this was when the current Supreme Court Chief Justice got millions of dollars in support from the big business lobby in our state, Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, then opposed and blocked a proposed rule to require recusal, and then ruled for hundreds of millions of dollars in tax breaks for that special interest. So they created these rules, and now they built this house, and now they want to light it on fire because they don't have the keys anymore. So that is the moment we're in. They thought they could get away with this impeachment without the public noticing, and a week before the rumors were flying they were going to do this, at the Democratic Party and with a bunch of different grassroots groups, we launched a campaign called Defend Justice. If you go to defendjustice.com, great website. Everyone loves defendjustice.com. You can look up your state legislators, see what they've said, contact them. Thousands of people have been flooding the state legislature with info. People have been knocking on doors, thousands of doors, tens of thousands of phone calls. And the Republican legislature are now freaking out. They're divided. Some of them love impeaching because they just love breaking any norm that they can find. Others are recognizing that this could turn into a gigantic political fiasco for the GOP. So right now, this is a jump ball. It could go either way. And frankly, the public outcry, the intensity of the public outcry will determine what happens next.
And if, I understand not wanting to go there because you want to just stop this in its tracks because it's so terrible. But this does open up, basically this is sort of a destabilizing step in a bunch of different ways, but one of the things it forces the governor to think about is, well, do we ask for this judge to resign and then you can appoint someone, right? Doesn't it open the gates to like, well, then they resign and you appoint someone new and they serve until the election and then they resign and then you appoint somebody else, right? Doesn't it start to cause a chain reaction of like power, of having to figure out ways around this kind of anti-democratic fervor?
So this is unprecedented. This is nowhere in the country have we been able to find a situation where a Supreme Court justices were removed before they ruled on something to stop them from ruling on it. It essentially would end the judiciary as a co-equal branch of government. And there's all kinds of scenarios people map out. One of them is, if they impeach, in our Constitution it requires corrupt conduct in office or crimes or misdemeanors. Obviously, none of those things have happened in this case. If they impeach, this will immediately go to court. And there could be a court case where Republicans discover that this gun is not actually loaded. There's all kinds of scenarios where this doesn't actually work out for them, to stop the consideration of the maps, to stop consideration of our abortion ban, to stop consideration of voting rights lawsuits. And at the same time, if they do this, then they enrage the entire public, the million Wisconsin voters who turned out, including tens of thousands of people voting for the first time in their lives in the state Supreme Court race. So that's the question Republicans have to ask themselves. It's kind of a "are you feeling lucky" situation for them. And they don't seem very lucky in this case.
Isn't it interesting that we use the term co-equal branches, but the co doesn't do anything?
It's like the Guinness Book. This is the kind of thing you think about a lot. You
It
know?
is.
Yeah.
What is the co doing? What is it doing? Nothing. I've talked about this many times. Equal branches. They're equal branches. Co-equal. Sure. What?
It's like the Co-Equal Rights Amendment, you know?
Sure, right, exactly.
The CRA.
It doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. But that's not important. So a lot of these Republicans in the assembly, these are MAGA Republicans that have spouted Trump's election lies. Then there are Senate Republicans, state Senate Republicans, who just voted to try and fire a state election official who had the audacity of knowing that we were in a pandemic, among other sins. You now have this effort to basically delegitimize an election because you didn't like the outcome. What should people listening that are in, we've talked a lot about Wisconsin feeling like a harbinger for the rest of the country. What is the lesson for people in other states that see what's happening in Wisconsin? What have you learned about how to fight back against this kind of anti-democratic sentiment, especially when, as you said, you're in this trap where they've used anti-democratic sentiment to hold on to power despite the voters in Wisconsin wanting something else?
This fight about democracy, and I think the biggest issue driving our elections right now, which is the fundamental freedom to make your own decisions about your own body and the freedom to decide whether to access an abortion, they're deeply, deeply connected, because Republicans they know that the only way they can rip away a basic freedom from half the population is if they then take away the population's ability to do anything about it. And to fight back, you have to fight on both fronts. And that is what we've seen here in Wisconsin, and you can see across the country. In this moment, as Democrats, as people who care about democracy, we didn't wait for them to actually impeach Justice Protasiewicz before we started fighting back against it. And I think when we look at 2024, when we look at other states like North Carolina and what Republicans are fantasizing about doing in Georgia, all these different places where Republicans are essentially talking about ripping up the basic idea of democracy in order to lock in total control, we need to go on offense and make the case that they're doing this because they want to take away basic freedoms, and people will vote and fight and organize for their freedom so intensely. Republicans are terrified of it, and they know that short-circuiting democracy is their only path to be able to keep those freedoms away. And so across the country right now, Virginia, all this is on the line in the elections coming up for the House of Delegates, for the state legislature. In Ohio, there's an abortion referendum. They tried to short-circuit democracy this August to stop that referendum from passing. And here in Wisconsin, the pressure campaign, you can join a phone bank and call voters in Republican legislative districts right now at defendjustice.com and you'll actually help get people informed and then angry and organized. I think the key thing for us is not to wait until the attempted coup 2.0 in 2024. We need to organize like democracies on the line right now, 365 days a year across the country.
What do you think about the Culver's cheese curds? Do you like? It's
They're
more
pretty
of a,
good.
It's more of a mozzarella finish. You know, it's like a mozzarella stick style.
Yeah.
It's not like the kind of smoother kind.
That's true.
You
I
know?
mean, so there are some like gas stations in Wisconsin that will have an entire rack of cheese curds of different flavors and varieties. Those are not fried cheese curds. It's a whole different experience. What I admire about Culver's cheese curds is that they're bringing cheese curds to non-Wisconsinites and teaching them about the most important state and our culture.
And that's so important.
That's so important.
And that's so important. Yeah, the thing is, it's your best kept secret. We got to get the Culvers west. I mean, these In-N-Out people are just resting on their laurels, thinking that they're offering something sufficient. Yeah. You know, these Chick-fil-A's aren't open on Sunday. We got to get the Culvers everywhere.
It doesn't need to be the best regional rapid food chain in the country, because it's not fast food, to be honest. This is made to order each time. Culver's needs to be a national force.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yeah, it is different when you're handed a number, you know? It's better. Ben Winkler, everybody.
Thank you.
Go to defendjustice.com. Thank you. That was great. Come on. Ben Winkler.